So good morning to you all. Good morning, my all PhD scholars at this Bath University and the global scholars all around the world. So once again, greetings from Kampala. This is Dr. Paul. Today, the topic of discussion, we are going to discuss how we can set the objectives of your research. We have two things. When we do research, we might have a title in front of you. In fact, your title should have come with the proper procedures so that setting objectives will be easy. But still, the scholars find it difficult how to set the objectives. Some scholars already have a title in front of them, what they want to do. Some scholars, they feel difficulty once even they have framed things, how to set the objectives. So today, in our session, we are going to see how we can set the objectives. So please watch this video and I'm going to share my screen for you. All right. So in fact, you can see myself, Dr. Paul, and today we are going to see how we can set our objectives of the research. I don't want to make it as a lengthy video because my videos are quite lengthy, so it cannot be embraced for everyone who watch this video. All right. So in today, what we are going to do, we are going to give an introduction to setting objectives, how to set objectives. Then we will discuss with some practical researchers, practical research titles, and you will ensure that reiterating how to set the objectives properly. And you know why we want to do, when you are doing a PhD, it is good to start with a micro research. Some of you might have done a micro research or small research of the kind or with systematic research methodologies when you're doing your master's or before your PhD or once you learn your research methodology program during your PhD. So what I say, a micro research is so good for you, which will stabilize, which will make you stronghold while you're doing your PhD real research. So for a full-scale research, it is good to keep a micro research. And today we are discussing more emphasis on how we can apply action research principle. So, when you do a research, PhD research, it should not remain in a paper. It should be something that can be implemented. This is what we call as actionable research. So now we are going to see after this session, maybe it may go for 30 minutes. After this session, the viewers, the scholars, they will be ready enough to set objectives for the research. Even if you have a research title with you, even if you have framed up your research, if you go through this session, it will help you to set your objectives in a better way. So keep watching this video. So how to set objectives for your research? That's what we are going to see now. How we can set objectives. First thing, if you are a researcher, if you have a title in front of you, you ask yourself, what you have to ask? You have to ask, what is the primary purpose of your research? That is the first thing you have to make sure, because it is quite confusing for researchers. What is objectives? What is aim? So I'm trying to resolve that complication. Those who know about it, no need to watch this video. Otherwise, you are a bit confused, bit complicated with to set the objectives of research. You ask yourself, what is the primary purpose of your research? Because if you take a research, it can be basically 5 areas. It can be to explore. You are exploring. A research to analyze, a research to evaluate. These are the first layer. A research for exploring, analyze, and evaluate. But a better way is to solve and recommend. Sometimes a PhD research should be a combination of many of these things, because you have to explore, you have to analyze, you have to evaluate a situation, and you should recommend a solution. So when you look at a PhD research, it could be a combination of all. But to begin with, I wish to take all these 5 elements: explore, analyze, evaluate, solve, and recommend one by one, so that you will be easily understanding through the process of setting the objectives for your research. So once you ask that question, then you can identify what you're going to do. Let's do it with an example. See this research title, Exploring the Role of Corporate Social Responsibility in Enhancing brand loyalty among millennials in the retail industry. Millennials, those who born between 1981 to that level of 1996. So that big gap. So With that time, these millennials, these people, they are more with social media, they are more with gadgets, they are good with internet. Not the exchange I'm talking about, the millennials. So here the research we are exploring. Now you ask me, oh, there is already a word exploring. So it is an exploratory research. I agree to it. Sometimes if you remove that one also, it can be a study on the role of corporate social responsibility in enhancing brand loyalty among millennials in the retail industry. So this title itself tells that the purpose of the title, see the purpose of the title. The purpose of the title is to explore how CSR activities are going to influence the perception of the loyalty behaviors of the millennials who are the customers in the retail sector. So if you look at this research title, we can see that it is actually an exploration. So the purpose of the researcher at this moment is to explore, and he want to explore the trends, what is happening. So this is a kind of exploratory research. Now look at this another one in IT. There is another research which I put. It's exploring the potential of blockchain technology in enhancing data security for government systems. You keep the word exploring, but the research here is going to study the potentials of blockchain technology. For why? In e-governance, you need a lot of data security. So in e-governance, how blockchain can be used. And the researcher is exploring that one. So, if you look at the purpose, you can understand that here the researcher want to study more on the exploratory part of the work. So this says that, he's going to discover, he's going to see any change and he want to put new insights to the real world. So I told you, when you have to ask yourself, when you look at your title, when you're going to do your work, you try to say, am I going to explore? So this is one method to set your objectives. Now, you look at this one, analyzing the impact of employee engagement strategies on productivity in small and medium enterprises. If you look at this one, we can know that here what the research is going to do is going to explore. He's going to explore, but there is a difference. It's not like the first time. Here he is going to examine. It's not exploration. He's going to examine how various employment engagement activities are going to influence the productivity. So the first research we have seen, the researcher wish to explore. Here, the researcher is analyzing. That means the researcher is examining. The researcher is doing an examining. So this is what actually it is an analysis kind of research objective. So we have to clearly identify the research objective. Is that an exploration or it is an analysis? Now we are going to see another title. This is also a kind of analysis. Here the title says analyzing the effectiveness of artificial intelligence algorithms in predicting cybersecurity threats. If you keep the word analyzing here, still it says the effectiveness of artificial intelligence algorithms. No, so what here the purpose of the researcher? The researcher is trying to assess the performance and accuracy of the AI-based algorithms in identifying and mitigating threats which can happen in the cybersecurity. So as a researcher, don't jump into quick conclusions. You look on what you are trying to emphasize. Are you trying to emphasize on exploration? Are you trying to emphasize on analyzing? So here the researcher is trying to make the relationship, the effectiveness. He's going to assess the relationship, effectiveness, and the outcomes. Now, let's see another research. Evaluating the effectiveness of digital marketing strategies on scale sales growth in e-commerce startups. So here, the researcher is going to evaluate. He is going to evaluate what? The effectiveness, what? Of digital marketing strategies and how it is going to improve the sales growth, especially focus on e-commerce startup. So if you look at the research title, the researcher he wishes to assess the impact of various digital marketing tactics, and that can drive the more customer acquisition. So this kind of research here, the researcher is actually assessing or evaluating the effectiveness of the outcome. So we have seen three things. The first thing, we explore, we analyze, and we evaluate. Now let's come to another title that's in IT, in management. See this one, developing strategic framework to solve employee turnover issues in the hospitality industry. You think that I'm still coming back to my research because my research was in employee turnover issues in hospitality industry. So here what the research is doing is developing some strategic framework. The purpose is that how the turnover issues can be resolved. So here the researcher is trying to create a structured approach in addressing a problem. So you are going to try to create a solution and trying to implement. So this is how the objective is set. So you know when you do your PhD research, it will be a combination of all, but you should be able to critically set, critically identify, critically separate each objectives when you do your research. So that is why I'm trying to give you more importance on what kind of researchers are involved in your research title. So that's how we can set our objectives. Now look at another research. Designing an AI-driven model to solve network congestion. Here, look at that designing. So it is you are developing something, you are formulating something, isn't it? So this is designing an AI-driven model to resolve network congestion in high-density urban areas. So what we do, the purpose of the research is to develop and implement an AI-based solution to reduce network congestion. So what you have to do, either you are a researcher in business, social science, or in ICT or biological science, you know, when you frame your research, you have to ask yourself, what I'm going to do here? Am I exploring? Am I analyzing? Am I evaluating? Or am I developing something? No, so this helps you to set your objectives because some people, not all, some people it is a bit confusion how to set the objectives of the research. Now, so here you can see in this one, the researcher is trying to identify an implementable solution. The researcher is trying to get an implementable solution through his research. Now, don't get bored up with so much titles I'm giving because these titles you can use in your research. I haven't worked on these titles. These are some thought processes which I get in my mind. I just put to explain the things. So this title, a sustainable supply chain practices for enhancing profitability in retail business. So this is a study on sustainability. So what I'm doing to here, this researcher is trying to set some actionable strategies for the sustainability of supply chain practices. So which will be environmental responsible. You know, you can use EV, electric vehicles, you can use some other kind of methods in which the environment, the carbon footprint remains less. So, you know, if you look at this one, this focus more on some kind of strategies and practices a logistics company can be used or logistics enterprise can be used so that there will be sustainable environment which can, you know, which can emulate better profitability in business. So, you know, look at another title, cybersecurity best practices for small businesses to mitigate ransomware attacks. You know, I just took some lines of the title. The title will have more lines in front of that one. But here, the researcher has a purpose, which all strategies can be used by small scale industries to strengthen their the digital environment so that ransomware attacks will not come, so that they don't have to pay money, don't get in a stuck situation. So here we are also more focusing on strategies and practices. So when you already have a research title, now I have told you there are 5 ways you have to see when you set your objectives, from evaluation, analysis, explore, then implementations and recommendations. So these are the 5 things normally comes in most of the researchers. But now just imagine you already have a research title. I know you all have a research title or you started working with the research. So how I know the objectives of my research? This is the most confusing thing. I have a research title, but I don't have so much clarity on what is my research objectives. So what I'm going to tell you here, if you don't know what is your objective, you ask yourself, read your title, look at your research and try to see, am I going to explore, analyze, evaluate, solve, or recommend, or all together, or few of them. So based on these 5 elements, you will be good enough to find which is the best way to set the objectives of your research. So what I'm going to say, you have a research title. Of course, you have a research title. And from that title, it has 5 dimensions. Is the title going to do an exploration, analysis, solution, recommendation, or evaluation? To me, I'll say almost all PhD researchers at least will have almost all these elements. That's my experience. But sometimes you may not have all these elements in that, but it is actually a PhD. So when you set your objectives, it should include all these things, or at least 75% of these elements has to come. But when you're doing your micro research, it is not necessary that you have to implement all these things, because micro research is a footing step to get into your actual PhD research. So we can focus, we can see this video in 2 aspects. If you're doing a full PhD, to set your research objectives of your research title, you can use all these 5 elements. If you're doing a micro research to strengthen your research capacity, you can use 1, 2, or 3, or combinations of these elements, what I'm going to tell you. So when you have your research title, now what you have to see, try to see the research title from these 5 angles. So first we are going to see explore. So explore means to investigate or examine a topic to uncover new insights, new patterns, new understandings. So what I'm going to do here, so when you look at your research title, is your research is going to do this exploration on new insights, patterns, and understanding. It takes time, but once you look into your research title with this angle, it will be easy for you to understand. So that means here we are not focusing on outcomes or conclusions. When we explore, we are not focusing necessarily. You can, but necessarily we are not focusing on outcomes or conclusions. So the title here, I'm going to give a sample title. Why I use titles? Because I believe you also have a title with you, isn't it? So exploring the impact of social media on consumer buying behavior in e-commerce. So this is my research title. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to look at this title on the angle of exploring, on the angle of the element of exploring. Let's see how it is going to come. So I put my title, Exploring the Impact of Social Media. How? Consumer behavior. Which segment? E-commerce. So here I'm putting the indicators. This is how we are going to identify the objective setting. So I'm putting indicators because the title suggests it is an investigation, it is an exploration. Because the researcher want to see what is being, you want to see the trends when we use social media and how it is related to the consumer behavior, buying behavior. Of course, social media has a lot of impact. We have seen the last Black Friday. Even I bought some gadgets from Black because, I bought a small speaker system. I bought a headset. So what I'm saying, the social media has an impact, and the Black Friday recently just happened the last November. People have made a lot of business. My mates who lived in Europe, especially in Germany, they told they even got things at a 25% cost only. So they got 80% discount. So, that social media thing. Then the next, if you look at another indicator of this title, the goal is to gain a deeper understanding. The goal is to gain a deeper understanding. If you read the title, the researcher want to get more deeper, and he's not going to make any conclusions. It's good if he can make. Now, if you look at the wordings, understanding, discovering, or identify. So this objective of this research will focus more on understanding the situation, discovering, or identify. So when you have a title, use these indicators. So when you use these indicators from the title itself, you can understand how you can set your objective. So this is an exploratory objective. This title can have more exploratory objectives in the way of pursuing the research. Now, let's look at this title on the perspective of analysis. So when we look at a research title on the perspective analysis, we have to break down the complex informations into smaller components. Why? because we are analyzing. So we want to identify the relationship, the pattern of relationship, and what is the behavior is going to be expected, or what is the behavior going to be produced. Because, as a researcher, you hypothesize some behavior, and after your research, you finally either you accept or reject. So this is what we are doing. This is what we are doing. So the objective, because if the objectives are well set, it will help your research journey. This is going to help you a lot when you do your testing. So that's why I'm telling you have to focus very good when you set the objectives of your research. So when you're doing analysis, as the major dimension of your title, try to break that into different small components and try to make into patterns and the behaviors. Let's see an example. Analyzing research, analyzing the relationship between employee engagement and job satisfaction in corporate setting. Employee engagement and job satisfaction, we talk about in corporate settings, not in small kind of industries or workplaces. So if you look at the dimension of analyzing, what we are going to do, we are going to see the following indicators from this research title. See, the title suggests the research is going to examine a set of variables and trying to establish the concept, you are dependent, independent, and many other variables what you're going to use in your research. That is one indicator from this title. Then here, the researcher is more focusing on identifying the patterns, the correlations. And the last one, the objective will be more on examining, comparing, and assessing different elements of the factors in employee engagement. So definitely we can see these indicators tell us the research objectives will be more focused on analyzing. The research objectives will be more focused on analysis. Now, let's take another dimension is evaluation. Remember, your PhD research will be a combination of all. So when you set your objectives, you have to make sure that the research title, your objectives mix and match, and it will help to improve your research process in a easy and satisfactorily way without struggles. Now, when we look at a research title and the perspective of evaluation, because here what happens, whether the research is trying to assess, whether it is going to measure, whether it is trying to quantify something, or whether it is going to find the impact of a process, method, or a system, then we can say the research has more amount of evaluative process in that. Let's take a title. Look at the title, Evaluating the Effectiveness of Online Learning Platforms in Improving Student Performance. So we have a system of online learning platform, LMS, and how it is going to improve the student performance. So it's actually an assessment. It is actually an evaluation. And moreover, it is looking at the effectiveness, because you have the traditional classroom side on one side, you have the online model on the other side. So you are trying to compare and find which is better. So if you look at this research title, we can use the following indicators, because the title implies measuring success or failure of the strategy. Which strategy? Online strategy. Now, also, the goal of the research is to judge which is more worthy, which is more effective, which is more efficient. So the indicators, one is measuring, the other indicator is judgment, and so it is a wholesome of assessing, measuring, evaluating, and determining the impact. And definitely this is an evaluation. This is an evaluation. So this title, the indicators what we identify from the title, make sure that the researcher is evaluating the performance of online platforms with traditional learning, and moreover it will give us which is the best, which is good, so we can make a judgment the efficiency of the online systems. Now let's look at your research title on the perspective, on the dimension of the solution, or you are trying to solve something. So here the researcher will be trying to get a solution to your problem, because when you do your research, micro research, already we all know that we have some stakeholders, we have engaged ourselves with stakeholders. So you are working for the stakeholders. All my scholars have engaged themselves with stakeholders. So these stakeholders are trying to need a solution. And you as a researcher, through your micro research, you are trying to get a solution to address the specific challenge faced by stakeholder. Let's take an example: solving the problem of employee retention in the health sector. So, if you take most of the countries, they have these challenges. So I don't want to specifically mention a country where the turnover rate is more, but I'm saying if you take in health sector or hospitality sector, a typical sector of any service industry, turnover is a big issue. So how we can find a solution for this? So if you look at this one, the researcher is trying to make some solution. So if you look at the title and you try to see the indicators here, we look the first indicator because the researcher is trying to find a solution or for a problem or a gap. Because turnover, we cannot avoid turnover, but still studies are going on different parts of the world, in different industries, in different methodological ways, how we can reduce turnover, because turnover, more turnover, it is a problem. So the title here, the indicator says it indicates develop a solution to an existing problem. Then the researcher is finding some practical solutions. The researcher is trying to find some practical solution in addressing a specific issue. So that is the second indicator. So if you look at this title, the objective can come verbs like develop, design, create, or address, because verbing is an important part. Use of verbs is an important part when you formulate your objectives. Because basically in micro research, I recommend my scholars to set only objectives. But when you go to PhD research, depending upon some universities, you can find you should have specific objectives and you should have the objectives. So for micro research, when you learn practical research, I say you set your objectives. So these are another indicators. So, if you look at your title, if you ask yourself, what I'm going to do. And this indicates how you have to set your objectives. So here you are finding a problem solution. Here you are finding to create a solution for a problem. Now, if you look at your research title on the dimension of recommending something for your stakeholder, because as a researcher, you are going to recommend something to your stakeholder. Now, you can find this will be the following things. You are going to suggest some strategies, some practices, some best actions to improve a process, to resolve an issue. Because I know my researchers, they work for supermarket chains. They're doing research for supermarket chains. They're working for some of the government firms as their stakeholders. Some are working for the Ministry of Health as their stakeholders. So all these people have problems. That is why you are implementing, you are start working with the stakeholders to resolve their problem. So what you have to make sure is your title is evolving out these factors, the recommendation factors. So you are going to create a solution for a problem. Look at this title: a study on improving customer services in retail business. Of course, now one of our fellow researchers is doing that one. I don't just want to tell the name and the chain on which we are working with now. So what I'm saying, how customer services can be improved in retail business, a study. So what we do here, after this study, the researcher is going to give some recommendations. He's not developing a new framework of customer relationship, but he is going to give some recommendations to the stakeholder through his research, how we can improve the customer services in the retail business. So let's look at this title: study on improving customer services in retail business. Now, I'm again, like the previous ones, I'm putting my indicators. This title indicates what? After the researcher is going to give some actionable advices, the existing customer relationship services in the respective stakeholder who is on retail industry, and what are the improvements to be done on that one. So it is providing a guidance, a set of suggestions for future actions on what happened in the past or what is happening now existing. So this is how we have to make sure how our research objectives are set. So if you look at this one, it is suggesting proposing, offering, or guiding. So your objectives will have all these things. Your research is meant to suggest, propose, offer, and guide towards improvement or change. So up to now, this segment, what you've told, this is a recommendation. This is a recommendation because for improvement, for better performance, this is a recommendation. So if you look at your research, what you are telling how to identify the objectives based on time. Now, when you do your research, through your research process, you frame up your title, you set your aims, and you set your objective of research. But setting the objectives of the research in a better way is very, very important for an effective research. So you take your research title, look at from the dimensions of objectives, whether your research is to explore, analyze, solve, recommend, or evaluate, or a togetherness of all. So this is how we have to work on your research. So I'm just concluding my first part of this research session. So today we have talked about how we can identify the objectives of a research based on the 5 perspectives. So I'll see you soon with another session. Thank you very much for watching. I wish you all the best. So let's work like this. This is the way when you start your research. This is the best way you can effectively make your research objectives. Thank you very much for watching.